Hello, and welcome to this third of our 3 short recordings on academic writing for the School of Modern Languages and Cultures. As always, I'm Andrew Struan and I'm from Leeds. So, what we're going to talk about in this recording is some issues around about plagiarism, some guidance on how and when and why to reference, and then some information on bibliographies. So the idea behind this class is to give you all of the essential building blocks and tools to display where your evidence, where your information, and where your ideas come from, to do that accurately, to do that correctly, and to do it so that you always avoid plagiarism and show your marker where your concepts and ideas come from. So the way in which we'll do this is we'll start by having the serious talk around about plagiarism from the University Senate, and then we'll go on from there and talk about how to avoid all of the unpleasantness, in essence, of plagiarism. So the University of Glasgow's definition of plagiarism, according to the Senate, is the submission or presentation of work in any form which is not one's own, without acknowledgement of the sources. So the work can be an essay, it can be a presentation, it can be a group project, it doesn't matter. It's any form of work. And it's the presentation of other people's work, i.e. work that is not yours, without acknowledgement of the sources. Therefore, plagiarism includes inappropriate collaboration. That might be buying work, buying an essay from an essay mill, or hiring someone to write your submissions for you. Or it might be relying on someone to write or rewrite your submissions. You also have the potential difficulty here of what's called auto-plagiarism. And this includes submitting work that has already been submitted for assessment, either at this university or for any other academic award. So that is, say you had an essay that you studied, that you had written in a previous course of study at another university in Glasgow, perhaps one of the ones that are, say, in the city centre. You cannot then reuse that same essay for us here at Glasgow. That's auto-plagiarism. The important thing to note here is that even if you have no deliberate intent to cheat, so even if you don't mean to cheat, the incorporation of material without formal and proper acknowledgement can constitute plagiarism. So work may be considered plagiarism if you have an unacknowledged, that is an unreferenced, direct quotation, or an unreferenced close paraphrase, that is where you lift concepts and ideas from another text and rework that into your own writing, but the ideas are there and they are not yours. Or an unacknowledged and unreferenced summary of ideas and arguments. So a summary of other people's ideas, a summary of other people's arguments. So as Senate says, in all assessments, information, ideas, concepts, theories, discussions obtained from an outside source, that is, from outside of your head, must be acknowledged according to the appropriate convention in that discipline. And we'll come on to what that is for you in a second. Direct quotations, that is when you're lifting the text from an original alternative place, lifting the words as they are on the page, must be placed within quotation marks and have the source cited immediately after the end of the quotation. Any failure to adequately acknowledge these sources in any of your submitted work can constitute plagiarism. So that's the serious chat around about the university's view of plagiarism. Let's look at an example. We've got on the left here our source text. You can pause the video for a second if you want to read through it. You have then on the right the submitted text. So imagine the right is your essay. The problem with this is it constitutes multiple different levels of plagiarism. So what we have here then is, firstly, copied phrases without quotation marks. Reality TV claims to feature ordinary people doing ordinary things. Well, as I read that there, was I reading from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? We don't know. You also have an incomplete reference. It's okay because you have Cole and Jackson, and that's where the original source text comes from, but who are Cole and Jackson? What publication are you talking about? Well, you're talking specifically about Cole and Jackson 2014, and this information comes from page 258. You have a last bigger problem though. Generally here, the paraphrasing or the summarizing is far too close to the original text. I can read the submitted text here, and even without looking back at the source text, I can see that all of the ideas, all of the concepts, all of the information, all of the words are the same as in the source text. This is too close. This isn't your writing, this isn't your voice. This is the source text, and all you've done here is essentially run some of the words through a thesaurus. This would constitute plagiarism. So, plagiarism is rewriting others' ideas without acknowledgement, stealing others' ideas without acknowledgement, perhaps inappropriate collaboration, as we were talking about on submissions, or auto-plagiarism of previous work. However, there are two very simple ways to avoid plagiarism. The first one, don't cheat. The second one, acknowledge your sources and reference appropriately. As long as you know where your information is coming from, as long as you tell your marker where your information is coming from, and as long as you reference, you'll be fine. Referencing, however, is more than just to avoid plagiarism. Referencing does so much more for us than tell us where things come from. So why do we reference? Why else do we do this? Well, we have that obligation to show where our work comes from, to avoid plagiarism, as we've been talking about. We also have a duty to acknowledge the work, the ideas, and the concepts of others. We have to acknowledge the wider academic community in which we sit, and we acknowledge their work. We acknowledge their contributions. We acknowledge their thoughts through our references. We also use this as a way of providing a source to validate evidence, to validate the claims, to validate the information you're presenting. Some people say X versus specific work at specific time in a specific place says X. Which one there is more convincing? We'll come on to an example in a second. Your references also allow you to show off your knowledge of the field or of your subject. Your references are your place to display all of the reading that you've done. You have read widely for an essay, you've read widely for the work, and you want to incorporate all that information and all that knowledge into your essay. Show off all that knowledge. Well, that ability to show off comes through in your references. You can also use your referencing to display your novelty. If you are writing, for example, perhaps an essay in modern languages and cultures, but you're also studying, say, sociology. You can draw in the novelty of the work from sociology, so maybe you want to look at something from a sociological perspective that is relevant and applicable in your essay. So you can draw in that novelty of that discussion again through your referencing. Show this off to the marker. You might then also link to other relevant information in your work, so maybe other texts dealing with a similar idea, and importantly, all of this allows you to engage fully in that research community. Being a student is engaging in that academic, that research community. And references show that you are part of that research community. So as I said, we have an example here. Which one here do you find most convincing? Some people think that academic dishonesty, plagiarism, or cheating is a major problem in the evaluative educational system. Great. Good for some people. That doesn't prove anything to us. That doesn't show anything to us. What we need here is specific references with specific data, specific information to tell us that this is checkable, verifiable, and provable. In essence, what we're looking for you to do here is avoid fake news. The one on the left, some people think. Who are some people? Why do they matter? Why do we care what they think? Whereas on the right, well, they matter because they have a published piece of work that is from a reputable academic press or academic source, and you're telling the marker exactly where they come from. So, for referencing, in the School of Modern Languages and Cultures, you will be recommended to use the Modern Humanities Research Association style, MHRA. However, you can use any other referencing style as long as you are consistent. There's more information on all of the available referencing styles on the library website, or speak to your college librarian. We'll focus here, though, on the key aspects of MHRA. MHRA uses superscript numbers within your text to denote references. That is, a little small number higher up in the text on the line of any sentence that links down to that reference information. You have here two options. You can either use footnotes, where that little number leads us down to a piece of information at the bottom of the page, or you can use endnotes, where that little number leads us down to the information at the end of your essay. Even though you include either footnotes or endnotes, you must still include a full bibliography. A bibliography is a list of the texts that you have read for your work, not a list of the texts that you know that you ought to have read. So take a look and make sure that the works you are referencing in your bibliography are actually used and actively cited in the text of your work. So let's take a look at an example of how this looks. So what we have here then are a number of different references. You'll see 1, 2, and 3. Important things to note here. The reference number comes after the piece of punctuation, after the full stop. Don't put it before. The reference number comes at the end of every quote. And the reference number is always telling us specifically where the idea in the sentence or maybe sentences before come from. So reference number 1 leads us to Nicholas Wallyman. Reference number 2 leads us to John Smith and Nancy Crane. Reference number 3 leads us again to John Smith and Nancy Crane. That then tells the marker, the reader, all of the information needed to be able to find where those concepts come from. So when else would we be referencing? We would reference paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is the conversion of the original wording, the original ideas, the original text into your own voice, your own phrasing. As you are lifting ideas and concepts and discussions from other places, you must still provide a reference. Paraphrasing should not look like you have lifted the text from somewhere else. It should be your writing, your voice. We want to see you writing about a concept or an idea or a discussion. But the ideas that you are taking from elsewhere must still be referenced. You will also reference when you're using quotations. Quotations are you lifting the words exactly as they are in the original text, and they must always be followed by a reference. You do not need to put quotations into bold, you don't need to put them into italics, you don't need to underline them. They are shown to be a quotation by the piece of punctuation that we have to denote this, which is a quotation mark. So avoid putting them into things like italics or bold, it's not necessary. As for when to use a quote versus when to use a paraphrase, most of the time we want you to paraphrase. You will use direct quotations when you have a precise or an accurate meaning that is important. for example, a definition or a key term or a key concept or a key discussion. Or you will use the direct quotation when it summarizes or emphasizes your precise point exactly. The way to think about this is this written is the original quote written in the most perfectly beautiful, exact way that pinpoints exactly how you think and how you feel about a particular topic? If that, okay, quote it. But keep your quotes to a minimum. Then at the end of your text, you'll have a bibliography. A bibliography is a list of all the sources, both primary and secondary, that you have actively used, that means actually used, in your essay. And it should be formatted in the style of your chosen referencing style. So if you've used MHRA through your essay, then you format your bibliography according to MHRA style guides. If you've used Harvard, for example, through your essay, then you format your bibliography according to Harvard's style. So different types of sources will require different references. And remember here that this is not a list of all the sources that you might have used and not a list of all the sources that you want your marker to think that you actually did read. It's just the ones that you actually used in the essay. So keep in mind for bibliographies, full publication details. Try a reference manager, for example. Make sure that you take notes of where your ideas and concepts and quotes are coming from. Your bibliography should come at the very end of your essay and appear under a new heading of bibliography, usually on a new blank page. And it should be formatted according to the style that you have chosen to provide your references in. So for example, a bibliography might look something like this. A bibliography is arranged alphabetically by the author's surname. So we can see here we've got A, B, B, D, G, so on. Arranged alphabetically by author's surname. And you provide all of the reference information here. So the idea here should be that a marker should be able to go to your bibliography and from your bibliography find the specific text, the specific web page, the specific tweet, whatever it is that you have used. So, in summary then, if you're in doubt here, reference. If you know that the information's come from somewhere else, tell us that. The one caveat to that is commonly held information. So, for example, you would not need to say that the Second World War started in 1939 and provide a reference for that. We know that. You don't need to show us where that information comes from. It's specific information that the general population would not know without having read that text. So if in doubt, it's better to reference than to not. And then remember to always consult your MHRA or your chosen style guide. So the important things here are to remember, plagiarism can be easily avoided, and we want you to provide references, to provide information in such a way that plagiarism never becomes an issue. Keep a track of your information, keep a track of your ideas, keep a track of your discussion, and always, always, always reference the information, the ideas, and the concepts that you're using.